Chapter 8 continued. Eventually, as young children often do, they soon forgot about their recent altercations, innocently moving on from any potential resentment. Refreshingly clean water flowing downstream and the warmth of the drying sun certainly helped. Melody had returned to lying back and soaking up the comforting heat of the day, while the boys broke off any suitable twigs they could find to use as competitive racing boats. What better and more relaxing summertime game to play at a stream with a bridge of sorts than the classic poo sticks? At the count of 3, the sticks were dropped simultaneously. Well, maybe not quite at the exact same time, but that was the rule. Once the boats hit the water together at the starting point, the boys hurried back to the other side of the boardwalk while the objects floated out of sight beneath them. They watched closely to see whose poo stick would pop out the other side first, arriving swiftest and unhindered across the finish line. Tar won the first round. But, of course, the second time around, Hugo just had to try and get the leading advantage of a split second or two by accidentally letting go too early. Anything for a sneaky head start against his opponent. Didn't help. His vessel veered off to the side, getting caught in a disastrous and fatal eddy. Naturally, round 3 found Tar going so far as attempting a subtle flick of the wrist for extra momentum to the water down below. Cheaters, the both of them. What is wrong with kids these days? After some more fun playing/cheating and arguing over who the winner might be, a slight rustling in the bush ahead of them caught the boys' attention. "What was that?" Tarzan interjected, lifting his gaze up from the stream towards the shrubbery a few meters along. Hugo shrugged, releasing his grip on Tar's shirt. Leaving Mel behind to snooze in the sun, the boys followed the narrow, winding stream into the high grass. Splashing quietly forwards, their vision was soon obstructed by the tall grass and a surrounding patch of weather-stunted trees. Despite the trickling of the shallow waters passing around their wet calves, the muffled sounds of ruffling again caught their straining ears. Tar grabbed the gnarly stalk of a bent sapling and pulled himself out of the ditch. Standing on slightly higher ground, he found himself still closed in on all sides by the thin saplings and their twisted branches. Blanketing moss and creeping vines made for a spooky environment. With Hugo right behind him, together they made their way through the mini wood along any semblance of a path they could make out. Tar had gone a step too far as Hugo stopped and looked up. Just above his head, sitting securely atop a very short tree, was a dark, thick, bowl-looking object. "Tar!" he whispered, beckoning him back. "Tar!" Tarzan turned around, immediately spotting Hugo's discovery. Long, thin twigs, intricately entwined above and throughout the branches, formed what appeared to be a bird's nest. Suddenly, a black shadow flew out from the nest up into the air, squawking loudly in protest. The boys both gave a startled yelp, jumping backwards in panic. "That totally freaked me out," Tar shouted. "Shh," Hugo recovered, pointing back up to the nest. "There might be some eggs, or maybe even some baby chicks." "No way, that'd be sweet." Studying the underside of the wide bowl, Tar considered the possibility, then offered, "I'll go get Mel." Hugo was left in the silence of the overshadowing brush, holding his breath in anticipation. Hunching down, with head tilted back, he scoured the sky for fear that Mama Bird might angrily return to protect her young. But it wasn't long before Mel appeared through the thicket, with Tar excitedly leading her along by the hand. Sharing their cool discovery with Mel, they speculated what they might find. A handful of colorful, delicate eggs? Or a nest full of fledgling babies with squinty eyes and beaks open wide for worms? Carefully, the boys grabbed hold of the narrow tree stalk and began to steadily bend the bowl down to eye level. "I've never seen a live baby bird before," Hugo said with excitement. Tar was equally engrossed in the moment. "Me neither, but you're not supposed to touch him in case Mama Bird abandons her young because humans stink." "Actually, I heard that's just a myth," Melody corrected, hoping to pick one up. She imagined cupping a silk-feathered chick in one hand, gently stroking it with a single finger. "Maybe there'll be a bunch of eggs we can take home and cook for lunch. Baby birdie omelet." "Huey," his sister softly reprimanded him, standing on tiptoe, the top of the bowl coming closer. "That's mean." Everyone stopped talking as the mouth of the nest was just about to come into view. Paranoid of tipping out any precious contents, the slow procedure made for great anticipation. Eyes wide, the boys watched as Mel made first inspection. "What do you see?" the boys whispered eagerly, still holding onto the tree. "Come take a look," Mel offered. Hugo, leaving Tar responsible for stabilizing duties, quickly left his post, coming round for a peek. Nothing. "What? There's nothing here." Nothing but a few feathers and some fresh white excrement. "Boo!" Tar expressed with disapproval. "All that for nada?" "I think it's too late in the season," Melody realized. "Not all birds lay their eggs in the spring, but the ones that were here must have hatched earlier on and then grew up and flown the nest. Maybe the one you saw had just been passing through." Mel was such a clever little girl. Huey stared in dismay at the empty bed, boasting of naught but the few stray feathers and dried bird poop. The fresh slop of white and black excretion, however, had courteously been left behind by the recently frightened inhabitant when taking to the skies. Tired of holding on by himself, Tarzan let go of the straining tree. The heavy bird's nest quickly snapped back upwards, violently pushing Hugo backwards into his sister, bitter bird dirt lashing across his lip. "Ah!" Hugo spluttered, stumbling and wiping his mouth with his sleeve. "Ow!" complained Mel, the back of her brother's big head hitting her right on the front tooth. "Ow!" Huey cried again in pain, reaching for the back of his head with the other hand. "That's sore." Looking at his sister, then back at Tarzan. "Thanks, Tar. Real nice." Tarzan, embarrassed by his lack of thinking, quickly changed the channel. With a cheese-eating grin, pretending to hold a microphone, he addressed his televised audience. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jacob Adamberger, and welcome back to our show, Gross Food from Around the World. In today's program, we've traveled all the way here to Bongo Bongo Land to taste for the very first time some of the exotic delicacies this weird and wonderful planet has to offer." Mel and Huey stared at him, unimpressed. Adjusting his tie without dropping the mic, Jacob turned to his imaginary interviewee in the grass skirt. "Thank you for joining us. Now, can you tell us what we're about to sample here?" Tar's audience watched him move into the other position, swapping roles. This here is nature's crockpot," the tanned local said, pointing up at the nest bowl in the tree. "What happens here is, this great big bird known as the cuckoo-luckoo comes along and rests. It just sits and does its biz and whatnot all night long. The next day, the cuckoo-luckoo leaves, and we add some root veg and some various delectable herbs and mix it all in. Throughout the staggering heat of the afternoon, it all gets stewed by the tropical sun." Back and forth went Tar, smoothly changing sides of the camera view. Fascinating," Mr. Adamberger enthused like any over-the-top presenter, Sounds excrement! Producing a large stainless steel ladle miraculously out of thin air, the naked native scooped a gloppy, generous helping into a small wooden bowl. This is considered a delicacy by our tribe and deemed highly offensive to be refused. It's called poop soup. Who'd like to go first? Yes, who would like to go first? Inquired the host, turning cheerfully back to his studio audience. Hugo blurted out, I'll go first, rushing forward with intention. Wresting the overflowing bowl from the hands of the local chef, Hugo poured its disgusting contents all over Jacob Adamberger's head. Jacob fought back, but then the whole studio suddenly joined in, breaking out into a sensationally televised stage fight. Props were thrown, chairs smashed, and not-so-tasty cuisine hurled to and fro. The place was in an uproar. Melody remained where she was, rolling her eyes, fingering her broken tooth.